It all began with a dream to create an ending to a video game. This is what led to Deltarune, a game by Toby Fox with its story told in chapters. While it is still unfinished and holds some of the biggest mysteries ever, it also has quite a lot of cut content, like the prototype version conceptualized back in 2012. Very little is known about this concept due to it never getting off the ground, but what we do know tells us quite a bit about the original vision of Deltarune. The most notable fact being that you wouldn't be able to spare enemies. You heard me right, arguably the reason why Toby's games got attention in the first place wasn't going to be a part of it at all. It is unknown what the gameplay implication this would have had, but it does seem like Toby always played around with the idea of his quote-unquote antagonists never being truly evil, as seen with this old Lancer dialogue. In fact, Lancer and the card gang were going to be part of the game from the beginning, as seeing the art of canotines, I totally butchered that, sparked the idea of the plot. Surprisingly, Jevil was planned too, as a major battle, using the song Heartache as a soundtrack, which was at the time called Joker Battle. Wow, that sounds horrible. In fact, many Undertale songs were planned to be used for Deltarune before Undertale even began development. Light and dark worlds were there too, but the light world would have been drab and boring colored, while the dark world was much brighter and more fun. All of the Lightners were also originally humans, who turned into monsters while inside the dark worlds. Yeah, this sounds pretty bad. Due to the lack of additional information and shaky sources, that is all about the prototype. But in 2018, we would be given our first look into the Deltarune we know of today, the Survey program. While technically not cut, the program was the first version of Chapter 1, which looked like a scary virus to anyone who tried installing it. Someone would be guiding us throughout this installation, asking if we accept everything that happens from now on. This person was very likely W.D. Gaster, due to the installation version of the software being the number 666, a number heavily associated with him. This way of installing the game had to be completely abandoned when it was put on Steam, and could never really work on other platforms, so I've had to mention it. It also tells us about Deltarune as a canonical experiment, maybe a bit too on the nose, so it being removed might be for the better. The first thing we are greeted by when opening the game is the vessel creation sequence. This one has some unused questions that are very interesting. The first one being a simple "Are you photosensitive?" gives off extremely weird vibes, making you wonder why it is even being asked in the first place. From the information we have about the game post chapter 5, we know that this sequence takes place within the depths, with that area supposedly being under hometown, full of darkness. This makes the question somewhat make sense, as this vessel would have been stuck down here for God knows how long, to the point where we can choose if they are literally allergic to light. Yeah, this thing was never gonna see the sun. Although it could also be referring to epilepsy, in which I don't know how to tie it into Deltarune itself, but it could be a cheeky way to make sure the game is configured in a way to not have flashing lights, as all of these options are stored in the save file. But then again, there already is a question similar to this if we roll with this explanation, so I am not sure. The second question is supposedly the vessel's favorite food, which was likely replaced by the favorite food type in the final. The only interesting thing here is that the egg is mentioned as one of the options. How peculiar. After your vessel gets seemingly discarded, Susie, or at least what sounds like her, would be screaming at Chris, yelling at them to wake up instead of Toriel. I think this may be some pretty creepy foreshadowing to a major future story event. Upon waking up or leaving our room, we realize that Toriel's room is actually locked. While it is never accessible in any chapter so far, it does exist in the code labeled as her room, but it is just a black box. I don't know if Tori's room will ever be accessible. It may have just been planned a long time ago and scrapped, and she would have supposedly, at some point, spoken to someone on her way to school. Now, let us talk about her glasses. For some strange and even annoying reason, Toriel has glasses in the overworld, but on her talking sprites, those same glasses are missing. This could just be a mistake in development, if not for the fact that the glasses are actually in the game files. It was a deliberate decision to make her not wear them, and it triggers me ever since I've learned about it. I can't unsee it. I am sorry for making it trigger you too. As soon as we awaken in the dark world, this first room would have been slightly larger. No clue why, we don't question it. Upon defeating Lancer, the player would also possibly engage with a major cut mechanic, the talk system. Similar to calling monsters through the cell phone in Undertale, we could talk to our party members at any point we wanted using this function. And this cut Ralsei dialogue dialogue is likely an example of how that would have worked. While I think this would have been kinda awesome, I think the amount of time it would take to write unique dialogue for Susie, Ralsei, and even Noelle would have been astronomical. And knowing Toby, he would have put even more work for all of these interactions to make sense. So I don't mind that it wasn't included. There's also dialogue from Ralsei that explains text skipping. The reason why this one might have gone unused is due to the reveal in chapter 5 that the Dark World is some sort of game. So Toby may not have wanted to tease it this early, yet left it in the files for us to find out, I guess. Instead of being a companion in the party, Ralsei would act as an enemy during the dummy battle, with the option to hug him. This is also an excuse to talk about the battle system in general, which has had many changes. Originally, the goal of the battle was to get all enemy names to turn yellow, and doing so would automatically complete the battle without having to press the spare button. Grazing bullets without being hit would also end the battle faster. This seems to be a very late cut considering it was alluded to in a twit longer after the release of chapter 1. Which means that Toby probably forgot he even cut this mechanic. There are even unused animations for attacks and skills, like the old heal and possibly old root buster. Surprisingly, a yellow one is here too, which is only associated with Noelle. Along with all of this, unique text and animations for when a specific party member had their turn were also here, as well as a concept of enemies acting differently based on how you defeated them. Lastly, and most interestingly, a strange death animation for enemies, similar to Undertale's one. This animation would later be reused for the Titan spawn, so it is very possible it was put in the game early on for this reason, but something about it bothers me. What also bothers me is that you're not supporting my Patreon. It really doesn't, but like, come on. So you'll remember that weird manual Ralsei gives us, right? There's plenty of jokes about it, and it acts as a funny moment. But did you know it would actually be readable at some point? It contains all of these following pages drawn in a very rough art style explaining the mechanics of the game in more detail. Weirdly enough, the config tab also tells us that it has seizure related configurations. Does this have anything to do with that first vessel creation question? Upon entering the field of hopes and dreams, the first thing we usually notice are the red trees spanning across the entire area and adding a sense of atmosphere and scale. But originally they would have been in different colors too, having blue and yellow variants. I definitely think the trees exclusively being red is way more iconic, especially with the tree of the Forgotten Man taken into consideration. Oh yeah, the grass also has an old texture. This one looks really stupid. This whole section is called Neo Ruins within the game files, which may also imply that the field was going to be a bit like the ruins in the past before the idea was scrapped, but I'm a bit skeptical on this one. Shom's shop seems to have had some sort of sign at one point, as well as a tutorial room featuring a strange ladder NPC. This guy may have been building a path of some kind that was never fully implemented. This box puzzle would have had an interaction that would trigger if we quote-unquote failed the puzzle, leading to a black screen and Susie angrily using the boxes to break down the door and move forward. I have no idea why this one was cut. It's a really funny interaction that shows Susie's early character quite well, and will play nicely into a later segment of the chapter where she's forced to solve a puzzle on her own rather than just cheating the system. Following this, a tree with unripe candy would have had a really interesting unique dialogue, where the party members make a joke about the candy being meaty like jerky. The reason why I'm even mentioning this is because in chapter 2, there is a callback to this joke, even though the joke doesn't exist, probably just an oversight. While there is not much about the Great Board, it did have an unused soundtrack which sounded really damn awesome, unfortunately cut due to the area being too small. Another important thing was the fact that after it, Chris would seemingly go with either Susie or Ralsei depending on their choices throughout the chapter, but this was scrapped due to issues with character development. The boss of the area, K-Round, was going to feature the throw mechanic too, but it was removed due to Susie constantly attacking. What a maniac. It is unknown when exactly they would appear, but the Pippins were intended to be chapter 1 enemies in early development. They are Kaino's characters after all, and Toby wanted to add them in, but the reason why they didn't make it past the X was supposedly due to them being unfun. Considering they were later reused for chapter 3, their bullet patterns were likely reworked, although I wouldn't call their current version very fun either. During our exploration of the Scarlet Forest, we would come across a magenta colored flame. While there is no actual explanation on what this thing is and its purpose, it's pretty likely it was the old version of the Sans doors used to fast travel around the areas. The reason why I think this is the case is due to the flames in chapter 4 holding the exact same purpose. And to me it seems possible Toby had this idea early on. The whole trash machine situation was quite a bit different. Originally we wouldn't be the ones designing it, rather it would have been Susie and Lancer, which is why they are the ones carrying this blueprint thing around in the first place. Instead of fighting the two, we would actually be fighting Susie hiding inside of the trash machine, known as the Doom Tank. This thing has actual battle information and even a peek at how it would have looked like, but the encounter was quickly scrapped and replaced by Susie and Lancer due to it being too difficult to implement. I am personally not bummed at all about this change. The Doom Tank looks really stupid, and the trash machine redesign having such a funny impact in the story and showing up in the best moments truly helps with remembering previous adventures. Clover, which is this weird tree-headed Cerberus thing, where the hell is Hercules, would have been a completely regular enemy at one point instead of a unique encounter that later hangs out in the Castletown dojo. This is another change I am glad was made, as this Darkener is really cool. By the way, I can't deal with join your party too. What the fuck, Toby? The final area of the Chapter 1 Dark World is the famed Card Castle, a short, mainly monochrome level with harder enemies. To get to it, we use this elevator from the basement, but originally the inscription would only show 4 floors, which could imply that floor 5, aka the rooftop, was decided on much later in development. I find this a bit weird considering how important the roof seems to be to the general plot, so it was likely one of the middle floors was added in rather than the rooftop. For some reason, you could also interact with Jevel's door after opening it. No clue what was up with this. Jevel. Back in the day, one of the coolest bosses and characters in Deltarune, now just a fragment of the past. He had a lot of cut attacks. There were these solo diamond bullets, horizontal spades, mixed chaos bombs, harder version of the carousel, an earlier, more boring version of the spade ring, and finally this weird whatever the fuck it is attack. Most notably though are the old Jevel's knives, which are totally placeholders but do act differently compared to their final polished versions. All of these attacks are at least somewhat interesting, and I would have loved to see them in the game, but I do think the Jevel fight we got is way more balanced in the long run. Unrelated to the attacks, Jevel has an unused animation fully covered in shadows looking backwards and dancing. I don't know why this thing exists, but it may have been used during his ghost phase or something. The battle with K-Round would have featured Roll's card on top of it. This would have been extremely funny, and it's a bit of a shame it could have been properly done. But I don't mind K-Round alone either. Love this little guy. Also, this isn't cut content related to the game, but there was going to be merch of K-Round. Before it was quickly scrapped because it looked too much like Nishiko-kun. Lastly, during the fight with the king, Susie would have had a slightly different sprite when saving Chris, showing a sign of fear, which she seems to fully lack in the final game. Hometown itself is kind of a big gift package full of cut content, so let us unpack it. The most notable cut room would have been the one labeled Northwest, with its location being past the big gate leading to the holiday house today. This room sort of conflicts with Toby's statement of the town having to have been finished and ready for the rest of the future chapters, as it's possible that this place originally led somewhere different, but since Noelle stands at this gate in chapter 1 and mentions losing her key, I find that a bit unlikely. It is just unknown why Toby never decided to use this room in particular and made the new one entirely for Noelle's house, and we'll likely never know why. But maybe you were for some reason never really going to visit Noelle, who knows man. A similar cut room is the apartments, but there is no additional information regarding them. We know that Susie's supposed real home is there though thanks to chapter 5, but it is unclear if this is related in any way. The beach room is the only room that has concept art about it, and that is pretty interesting considering the weird things that happen in it. Another really poorly drawn sprite are the flower shop lights. These may have been planned for Asgore's shop before being scrapped and reused in chapter 5. Asgore's shop also has an unused inspect prompt for this bush wall, and the only way to get it working is to remove Asgore's collision box from the screen. This is a pretty buggy prompt too, so I am not entirely sure if it was ever developed properly before Asgore was added in the scene to follow Chris. The school has an entire sprite, revealing a fence behind it that isn't visible within the game itself, as well as a roof with a door. The only place where this roof may be accessible from is this locked school door, but it also might just be a completely scrapped idea, which is why the roof isn't visible in the first place. But then again, the card castle does have a roof, so maybe this was that? No, it wasn't. Chris also has a completely unused light world sliding sprite. Due to there being no ledges in Hometown, the inclusion of it makes no sense. And even forcing Chris into a sliding animation within the light world does not trigger this sprite. Could it be some sort of teaser for the future? Maybe. Another mechanic was an option to sit on Gerson's bench, but the game would stop you from doing so anyways. And it's a bit strange this dialogue wasn't included in chapter 4 either. Similarly, buying hot chocolate with a full inventory would have given you unique dialogue, which as we all know is not possible under any circumstances. So this may be some sort of bug testing scenario or a failsafe feature. These last few are a bit strange. Unused Catty sprite with hearts in her eyes, Sans without his eyeballs visible. This one might be an Undertale leftover, but then again, one of them is missing from the full sheet, so it might be something else entirely. And that is all of the cut content present in chapter 1's gameplay. But wait, don't go to sleep yet, we still have more stuff to talk about, like the two unused weapons, the appropriately named Everybody weapon and the trefoil. The first one is obviously for testing purposes, but the second one was some sort of mirror to the spooky sword, even becoming the lucky pencil in the light world as opposed to the Halloween pencil. It was a rapier that increased the party's money earned by 5%. Wow, that is useless. Weapons in general also have a programmed value for the amount of hits you can deal with a single turn, similar to how some Undertale ones function. This mechanic is completely unused though, even as of chapter 5. Along with these, there are two unused pieces of armor, the pink ribbon and the mouse token. No clue what the latter was, but the pink ribbon was reused in chapter 2. Quite a bit of healing items as well, the most notable one being the favorite sandwich, healing 500 goddamn HP. This is probably a testing item though, and it also may be a reference to the favorite food in Mother 3. The Giga Salad, oh man, with such a name it must truly heal for a lot of HP. Wait, only 4? What the? And there are also items that seem to be extremely old, such as the Live Dew, an older version of the Revive Mint, and a buffed version of the Dark Candy healing 60 HP rather than 40. Incredible. Strange null items existed, which are actually just empty items that the game uses to fill your inventory slots. The reason why I'm mentioning them here is due to their dialogue that cannot be accessed with normal gameplay. All of it is extremely cryptic and even strange. It does make sense with the fact that these items do not exist, but still, I don't see why it has to be written this way. Reminds me a little of the dialogue you get during the 1-2-2-5 sequence in chapter 3, Wild. The only unused spell in chapter 1 is the Root Sword, an older version of Root Buster. In Deltarune, there is supposedly a character stuck in the code, talking about how they're unable to get out and calling for help. Along with this, there is an unused combat encounter labeled G-Body, either referring to Goner Body or more sinisterly, Gaster Body. We will be talking more about this in future chapters. The only other unused encounter is labeled Monster 1, which is likely a weird testing encounter, but one that may have had some plans to be used. The reason why it is important to note is due to the availability of the spell Dual Sword, which was basically a double root sword performed by both Chris and Susie. This concept got somewhat reused for chapter 4's Titan fight, so it's unlikely we'll see it again. This chapter also shows values for a supposed chapter 8, 9, or even 10 in the game's code. This was, at the time of discovery, heavily speculated to be the real chapter count of Deltarune, but has since been heavily disproven by a boatload of evidence. It is very likely that these are just placeholder values instead, possibly for testing purposes of some sort, as there is also a chapter 0 that is likely there to push the chapter 1 value up by 1 to avoid index pain in programming. As much as I want to see more of Deltarune, I am not disappointed in there being only 7 chapters. Wow, that sounds a bit crazy to say considering how close to 7 we actually are. Alright, let's breeze through some cut songs. School used to have a massive Don't Forget motif that felt like it was overused, so the soundtrack ended up not being used. A verse version of Legend exists too, an old King theme, and an older theme for the fountains. The Holy definitely sweeps this one. Lastly, and most interestingly, is this sketch of the opening theme of the game, and Toby describes this as a similar introduction to Wild Arms, with all the bosses in the chapters being silhouettes, and the knight being at the top standing in front of a white door. This is really weird and would only really work if all of the chapters were released at once, which was the original intent. The white door being mentioned here is super interesting because it feels deliberate. White doors are only used in correlation with one man, the mystery man in Undertale, pretty much confirmed to be Gaster, but it is impossible to know if this was the exact door Toby was talking about. This sketch was also seemingly reworked for a chapter 5 trailer. And before we close off this video, I want to take a look at some concept art, which may be able to give us a better idea of cut content. On this first page, we can see Ralsei's cute sprites, but what is interesting about these is his chest having this spade symbol. In the actual chapter, Ralsei is seen with a heart on his chest, but from chapter 2 onward, this is changed to that same spade. This is likely Toby retconning the character a bit, and I find that pretty damn funny. Here we can catch a glimpse of some old Lancer designs, and I would rather we not catch a glimpse at all actually. Jewel used to be a bit different, and holy glow up in the final game. I mean, compared to this, Jewel looks like an absolute Chad. This art depicts the old design of the coat hanger that usually appears in Castletown. Toby said that the reason why this design went unused is because it seemed too cool. So he just made him a coat rack and called it a day. That sounds exactly like Toby. Pizza Pants has a lot of unused faces. I hope they stay unused. That's a joke, I love this guy. Rabbik used to be some sort of weird caterpillar thing. Glad this was changed. I really like the current design. You know, this design probably got split into both the Rabbik and the caterpillar we see in the Dark World. This is a really interesting one. Here is a completely cut enemy that was planned to appear as a tree in different shapes. They would have functioned similarly to Swatchlings, and you had to rearrange them based on what they wanted to be. Unfortunately, the enemy seemingly turned into the Bloxer, which was way simpler to develop. And I kinda miss this thing. I mean, it's so damn cool. We do catch a glimpse of it in the forest puzzle, but it doesn't even come to Castletown. God damn it, Toby. Roll's card as a shopkeeper would have been a little bit different. Instead of him, it would be this weird guy and this robot thing. You know, I used to kinda hate Rolls, but he grew on me with time. Wouldn't trade him for these losers. Shom also has this sketch, which was revealed a bit later, holding some sort of staff. Considering Shom's major role in the story of the game, this may be hinting towards something we have no clue about as of now. And finally, we have the most important cut enemy of all time. The fact that this thing did not make it in is the biggest blunder Toby has ever made. And it is in fact what you thought it was. The infamous Death Lord! I hope you all enjoyed this one. Huge thanks to the Deltarune wiki and the cutting room floor for the crazy amounts of information that helped make this video. And a special thanks to my friend Tom Nook for discussing these things with me. It's a bit of a departure compared to my Hollow Knight videos, but Deltarune is one of my favorite games and I really wanted to make this type of video. I'll hopefully be making more of these for each chapter released so far, so if you want to support my videos, check out my Patreon for exclusive Discord server. That's it from me, thanks for watching and have a damn good night.